Hi, everybody. I haven't done very many videos about movies. It is something that I would like to, do more of in the future. But I wanted to check in with a quick chat about a movie that I recently saw that, it intersected so well with a couple of books that I recently read and have done videos on that, I thought it would be really cool to do a video on it because I have just been thinking a lot about it since I happened to see this movie. The movie that I saw and that I'm talking about is called The Conformist, and it is was directed by Bernardo Bertolucci in 1970. Here is the um, one of several movie posters actually that I saw on online for this movie. This is one of them. There was several to choose from, and it also depended on where you were seeing the movie. So I just this is look actually it looks like I chose one that's in Spanish because that says El Conformista. But anyway, it's one of them. One of the movie posters. Anyway, this movie, it came out in 1970, and its main characters are, first I'll go through the characters, I guess. The main character is named Marcello, and he is played by, I'm going to have to read this because I wrote him down, Jean-Louis Trintignant. Okay, and his wife Julia is played by Stefania Sandrelli, and then there's his sort of sidekick in the movie. Actually, it's not really a sidekick. I guess it's a fellow fascist because this is occurring during fascist Italy. The movie takes place during fascist Italy, and I'll speak more to that in a moment. But his fellow fascist is name is Manganiello, and was played by Gaston Mochin. And then the professor, there was a character who had been his professor, who was exiled now in France because he was critical of the fascist regime, and he was played by Enzo Tarascio. And then his wife Anna was played by Dominique Sanda. So I want to apologize to all the French and Italian speaking people around the world for how I just probably did not do a very good job of pronouncing the names of these fine actors and actresses, and I have to say they did a magnificent job in this movie. First, a little bit about background about where I heard about the movie. So I just happened across this movie because I was watching a YouTube video just sort of casually one night, and I believe the YouTube video that I was watching was one of these list videos of where it was listing. I think it was cinematography, and I really wish I had written this down, but at the time I didn't really realize that I was going to come across this movie. And then just a few days later, I saw this movie available on Netflix, and I thought, oh, that's the movie from the video the other day. So that's why I ended up watching it, and it wound up connecting really super well with a couple of books that I recently read, which I will talk about in a moment. But first, a little bit about the movie, just what the plot is about. So the plot, there is the main character in the movie. His name is Marcello, and he has grown up in sort of a wealthy, we get the impression, sort of privileged family who has then it has decayed. And so the movie starts, and he's actually in a car on his way somewhere with this other fascist named Manganiello, and the story is then told to us in a flashback. So we are told kind of the background of what's going on in in snippets of his memories, and so we get to know him a little bit through these flashbacks of him in the car, and we find out this is how we find out that he came from this sort of aristocratic background, and also he has had some sort of homosexual experience in his youth, which was at the same time a trauma, a sexual trauma, that has occurred when he was very young, or a young boy, and that has sort of, you get the impression that has really impacted the whole rest of his life. And so, through what we find out through these sort of flashbacks, is that he really is struggling to have what he calls a normal life. So we get this flashback of him trying to join the fascist secret police in Italy. This all takes place in the 30s, and then ultimately also he is told that he is going to have to go to France and assassinate his former professor, who has left and fled Italy for France, because he was opposed to the fascist regime, and so he is given this task. And so I don't think I'll give away much more of the plot, other than that, because I never really know where to draw the line with spoilers on my videos, because I'm not doing a movie review per se. I'm really chatting about the book, my experience. I'm not the book, the movie, and my experience with the movie. But I don't want to take away from anybody's experience who may not have seen the movie. And even though it's not what I would call a plot-driven story necessarily, because really it's about his struggle, and his need and his desire, not really his struggle, because he doesn't really have to struggle too hard to conform, but he has this need and this desire to conform to the existing social structure, and he really wants to, really all he wants in life is to fit in to that normal structure. And he sets out then to go and do that. And then as the movie progresses, and by the time we get to the end, we really see that. Although this movie, to speak a bit about the movie in general, it's considered today a classic. Of course, Bernardo Bertolucci, it was one of the greatest directors of the 20th century in Italian cinema. And this is just beautifully filmed. And the story is told. We really, when the movie's over, and you give it some thought, you really or I was able to really internalize his need for conformity. And it's one of those movies that when I found myself, when it was over, returning back to it and thinking about it often. And that's sort of how I put it together to match, to sort of went along with these two books that I had just finished reading that also touched on the theme of conformity. And so I think that's really, it was really interesting. So the last thing about the movie that I wanted to mention, though, is about how it's filmed. This movie came out in 1970, I think, as I mentioned earlier, but it's really not dated. There was only a couple times that I really could realize, okay, well, maybe this is 1970, that it might have felt a little bit like 1970, but it is so well done that it really could pass for a movie that was just released. And I think those types of movies, I don't think I want to say that they're preferable, because sometimes movies are part of their value is actually in the fact that they're immersed in their own time. But this movie was made in 1970, and it is actually occurring then in the 1930s and early 1940s of fascist Italy. So it's a period piece to begin with, and I think that was extremely well done. And I felt like I was really immersed in that time and that place and that sort of conformity, requirement of conformity during fascist Italy. So about the other two books. So Marcello in the Conformist, the movie, he really he's outside of the normal, and he is actually taking immediate steps then to try to become what he considers normal and to conform to the greater society. And that's really all he wants to do, is have a normal life where he fits into society, the dominant society. The book Stoner, so if you saw that video or you have read that book, the video that I did on that just not too long ago, that character in that book is a middle-class, middle-aged man, and he is an unhappy man, and he is not able to not conform. He can't be nonconformist, in other words. It's just not in him, and so he's really trapped sort of in his in his unhappy life because he's not able to break free of that conformity. He did not seek that conformity. He was just enmeshed in it from the time he was young, and so he doesn't have any tools to actually be a nonconformist. So he's stuck with being a conformist, even though his happiness would lie outside of that, and he's not able to see that necessarily. And if you, I don't think that's really that much of a spoiler about that book either. To know that bit about it. And then about Steppenwolf is the other book that's related to, and I don't think this is a spoiler either, to talk about Steppenwolf in these terms, because Steppenwolf, the book Steppenwolf, the main character in that book, is he is unable to conform. It's just not going to be possible. He's always going to be on the outside of the, what's considered normal, because he's outside of that. And even though in some ways he's unhappy out on the outside, the way his life is and the way he is not able to make himself conform. He sometimes is drawn to the middle class, and he takes rooms, rents rooms in middle class homes, and is drawn to the middle class in this sense, but he can never be a part of it, and he's always on the outside of that, looking in, and that creates a sort of sense of isolation and loneliness for him until he sort of seeks and finds other realities around that. But I did a video on that very recently, so if you're interested in that, you could check back that. But I check into that. But I thought this was really cool that these three works of, two works of fiction and then a movie based on a novel, though, from the 1950s, I believe. The movie itself was based on. These three works of art sort of all pertain to the idea of conformity, and yet they're all different aspects of it. There is the person who desperately wants to conform and actually works his way into conformity and makes sure that he's taking steps to conform. There is a person who cannot conform at all, because he's always on the outside, so even if he tried, he would never be able to fit in. And then there is the other character who is not able to not conform, meaning he cannot be nonconformist. He's stuck sort of where he is in what is considered the normal, and he can't break out of that. And I think that's everybody, or at least me. For me personally, I think I have a little of all these people in me. So I think that's one of the great things about experiencing things like this movie and these two novels, that can really give pause to think about conformity and how different aspects of conformity impact us in our lives. So I think I'll leave it at that. I really thought it was cool that the movie sort of popped up after I happened to see and hear about it on this YouTube video that I wish I could give credit to the person who did the video in which The Conformist was in, but unfortunately I didn't write that down and I don't remember what it was. So sorry about that, but maybe I'll look it up and put it in the comments if I can find it in my history and give credit where credit is due. So that's it. Take care. Until next time. Talk to you soon. Bye.